Welcome to VIP Creativation 2020. I'll be the only one that gets that intro, so I figured I'd start that. So I'm just going to go through an overview. We'll see how this 15 minutes lasts, and then if we have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Just going to take you through the brand. So I've divided it between Distress and Alcohol Ink because as a designer for Ranger, I treat them as two completely separate brands within a brand. So newest, I would say, would be the Distress Embossing Glazes. And these are very cool because this is a translucent embossing powder. Okay? And the nice thing about this is it's designed to glaze something, whether you're going to put it over a stamped image, whether you're going to put it over ephemera, paper dolls, anything that you want to add that tint. So all of these swatches right here, there's not a drop of Distress ink or color. The color comes from the powder itself, the glaze. And because it is a translucent embossing powder, you can put it over multiple things. You can put it over something already inked, like this ink background, and I'll pass it around if you want to take a shot of it. But the cool thing about the glaze is the fact that any of that texture that you get underneath your ink is going to be visible through that glaze, right? So it's not going to re-wet that ink underneath. Even if you're using embossing ink, it's going to keep all of that texture and look. So you're welcome to take a look at that. The other uses that we have for glaze, of course, is with a stamp. You can use it with a stamp over a background, and it creates almost like a watermark, but because it's a glaze and it's translucent, if you use a different color of Distress ink, that's going to have an impact on the color of the glaze that you use, right? So the darker the color blue, for example, you could change the tone of weathered wood, right? If you just use weathered wood on weathered wood, you'll get that true color. If you mix color on your stamp, you can get an ombre or a gradation of color when you're using it. You can also just use glaze directly over background, including oxide. So this swatch shows what it would look like with just clear embossing powder, which does nothing, or the embossing glaze. And the embossing glaze is not a fine detail powder, but it's also not a really thick powder. So when you use it, you can even crack it onto the paper, and it has great adhesion, so it doesn't chip off. We can use it with different textures. So right here, we've used the glaze over a texture paste, an embossing paste. And because the paste is white, it really brings that color out, because remember, these are translucent. So you put it over something white and you get this pop of color. And these are done simply by taking different colors of glaze and sprinkling it over the paste while it's wet and then embossing it. So not only are we getting a great texture, but we're getting that shine, that gloss of the glazes. Now, because the glazes are shiny, you can use them on a variety of things like metals. So this is just the Ideology metal clip. That's when it's glazed, so it just kind of looks like a galvanized steel. Or if you're going to put it over something like wood and you don't want it shiny, steel wool. Steel wool, after you emboss it, will completely dull it out. So it still gives it that texture, like almost like a wax, but it doesn't give it that shine. So that could even be over a card. So if you ever want to use the glazes over a card even, and you put that on there and you don't want it to be shiny, take some steel wool, go over it after it's embossed, and it's just going to look like you did wax, caustic wax. So, and that works with any embossing powder. It's not just these, but it's a cool trick, right? So of course, with our glazes, we have different things to adhere them. We've had the Distress Embossing ink pad. Now we have a Distress Embossing dabber. What makes this dabber unique is instead of a foam top that Ranger has, this is a felt. So it's just like a stamp cleaner. And that's going to allow you to put a very thin application of embossing ink down. Because if you're embossing on substrates like metal or wood, if you have too much embossing ink, it's going to actually melt but then slide off, because that glycerin doesn't have a chance to bond to anything. So the thinner the ink that you apply on mixed media, the better. This will allow you to go over chipboard, go around the edge of something. It gives you total control. We also have Distress embossing pens. There's really nothing significant about those pens other than they're part of the Distress line, right? And I just want to be completely candid about that. If you have other embossing pens, you can use those with the glaze. But I just wanted them part of the line because it just made sense. I use the pens for things like Ideology dolls. That's how we tint those. Take that embossing pen, color that clear ink on there, cover it with a glaze, heat it up, and now you have a tinted, shiny doll. Pretty simple. Then, of course, we have some mediums. Now, texture paste in both regular and crackle, these have been in Ranger's line for quite a long time. They're still in Ranger's line, but they also put them in the Distress line, just because these work so well with Distress products. They work great with sprays, with ink, with oxide, and Ranger's really getting better at putting products that work well directly with the brand, all right? The difference between these, I put mine in a little smaller jar because I think with art mediums, we all know that just because it's a big jar and its value, it's really not great because it's going to dry out. So it's like I want a lower profile jar. So it's just over 2-ounce jar, but it's really nice because the regular texture paste works not only with glaze, but with ink, oxide, sprays. The crackle, foolproof crackle. If you put it on, it's going to crack. Really, you don't have to worry about like how we had with rock candy and crazing about put it on thick and wait for this. This, you just put it on and you can, of course, ink, crayon, anything. Then we have grit paste. Now, we introduced grit paste a few years ago, that white grit paste. Great, obviously, for Christmas time. It's a gesso-based thing. It has some really nice grit to it. You can color it. But a lot of people really wanted to use grit for rust, and I don't blame them. It's all, I love the rusty crusty of everything. So now we have translucent grit paste, which means you can put it over something. It's going to be gritty, but when it dries, it is translucent. And I say that, and that's why I wanted to do this swatch here. Obviously, the thicker you put something translucent, the less translucent it is. Does that make sense? So although it does start clear if you kind of put it on thin, like if you're going to use it like rust, you can spread it onto metal or anything. If you put it on really thick, it actually starts to get a little matte. It's nice texture. Yeah, and it will take any medium, so you could put crayon over the top or paint, and in Ideology booth you see a lot of like rusted hardware and things like that. It is all transparent grit paste. You just take it on with your finger and just spread it on because it'll bond to anything you put it on. Metal, glass, wood, any of that. So we've got our glazes, we've got our embossing, we've got our mediums. We also have distressed collage medium now in this wonderful little 2-ounce bottle with a nice detailed tip like glossy accent. So any of your detail gluing, you can now glue collage medium. Perfect for any gems, buttons. I mean, I use collage medium for everything because it dries completely matte, shrinks when it dries, and it bonds. Then we have the long-awaited, oh my God. Believe it or not, this is the first tin that we wanted to do before we did any other tin, and it pretty much is like the last tin we did. But this is a distress ink pad or oxide storage tin. It holds 15, has a clear pocket inside design that you can pull out any ink pad. If you've collected distress inks through the years, you know that the lids, some of them are like, you know, this little puzzle that locks in, some of them are a little loose. So I wanted to make sure that this storage will actually press this lid on and hold it, so they will always be airtight when you're storing them. So whether you're storing them this way, that lid is not going to loosely fall forward. As soon as you put it in, this little pocket comes up far enough that it keeps this completely airtight. You can store your ink pads sideways like this, even though people don't think you can. You can. You can stand them up so they're right side up. If you're one of those upside down people where it just, you can't sleep and that happens, you can pop out the insert, flip it over, put it back in, and then your ink pads would be upside down. The other great thing about this tin that we haven't done with our other tins is that it is stackable, right? So when you put these on, these actually lock together. So the way this has a lip and this is rolled underneath, and you're putting it on, so you can have them on your shelf and you don't have to worry about everything tumbling down. I know, it's worth the wait. Yeah, and 15 was good. It just has a nice weight to it. You do any more than that, it's like you'll need a luggage for the luggage. So, all right. Then we have cardstock. So we have one SKU of cardstock. Well, we have two SKUs, but it's one style. It is cracked leather. And cracked leather is just a 111-pound white cardstock that has this really cool kind of leathery texture. You can use it, of course, with ink blending, with sprays, with paints, and you can really get it to look like authentic leather, which is awesome. And you can put it on all sorts of things. I'll pass this around again so you can get that money shot. You want to take a look at those, but it's got a really unique texture, and if you're putting it on vignette boxes or planners or anything and you don't want to use fabrics, it's nice that you have a cardstock option. So that is the distressed leather. So jumping from distress to alcohol. Wipe the slate. Cut. Cue edit. All right. Next we have alcohol inks, and of course this alcohol ink world, there's a ton of stuff that has really been added to the whole line. We start with 15 new colors of alcohol ink, and these colors, I definitely encourage you to take a photo of the swatch board, because when you see them in swatches, it's very easy to identify what's new. 15 colors are very intense, very dark, very rich. And we did that simply because today's alcohol ink user is using a lot of isopropyl alcohol blending solution to do very large paintings with this ink. The ink is very nice because it is for non-porous surfaces, so we can use it on a variety of substrates, everything from coated black cardstock to alcohol ink glossy cardstock, Yupo, metallic cardstock, even sparkle cardstock, do a lot of things. And then of course the alcohol hardcore panels, which are a wood panel that are laminated in vinyl on both sides. This is our new shape, just this hexagon. Cool thing, the ink can be used exactly how you would use it on Yupo, so it will blend, it will lift, you can use resin on this, and this just makes for a nice art project. So if people are kind of dabbling in alcohol ink, maybe they're outgrown cards a little bit, but they don't really want to commit to that big Yupo painting, these panels are a really great way just to get them to play around with the inks. And of course, because it is that vinyl, it is very forgiving. You don't like something, put alcohol on it, wipe it away, and yeah, I would say it's like the creative Etch-a-Sketch. Like, you don't like it, start again, all right? So in addition to the colors and the substrates, we also have alcohol ink alloys. alloys, it's wild. 5 different metallics, gilded, mined, sterling, statue, and foundry. And the cool thing about these metallics is that when you're working with them, they're very different than a mixative. So here shows a metallic mixative. Try to see if everybody gets that light. Do you see that little metallic on there? A mixative has been designed to mix in with the alcohol ink. When you use a mixative and we stamp, we're getting those little veins, that polished stone look. The alloy is a completely different metallic. It is a leafing metallic. And that leafing metallic is designed to actually clump, to stay in chunks. And when you use it with blending solution and other inks and isopropyl, it will spread, but it will keep these big chunks. And it's definitely completely different luminous factor than the mixative. How long will the mixers be around? I'm not sure, really. And that's kind of we don't know what it's going to be like after the show, right? We just don't know if people are going to be like, okay, I see a need for both, or they're just going to be like, it's shiny. Shiny, I knew I'm going there. So, because I've already said to Ranger, I'm like, what are the future mixatives? Like, well, time will tell. I'm like, okay. But to be honest, you know, I would be completely fine with alloys, because the alloys, you can still, I think, get them to mix around. So I love the fact that they were able to find a new, brighter metallic to use with alcohol, which is great. Then a tool. This is the alcohol ink blower. It's just been one of those demos when you guys watched it yesterday. It does change the way these inks can go on its surface. It's just a very soft rubber squeeze ball with very big opening, and then all of these ridges, so it doesn't roll off your table. It's just going to kind of roll into a circle. That's it. It will stop. But this is going to allow us to take our inks and blow those inks and move them around, and pretty much paint with air. And that's the nice thing about the opening of this, is that it will allow me to move my color, move my alloys anywhere that I want on its background. So just a different way to apply the color. I mean, I see a lot of people using paintbrushes or using ink tools or straws. Bad news, don't use a straw, don't inhale from that. But the blower is just really cool. I think I covered it. Any questions on any of this? And then, how much time do we have before I demo? Anybody know?
Can I touch the bowl?
Absolutely, you can.
Oh, it's nice and soft.
Yeah.
For carpal tunnel.
It's really nice because it doesn't take much. And I'll go in and show you. We'll take a little movement. We'll take that. We'll take a couple of quick colors. And I'll even take an alloy. We'll just show you how easy it moves, because it does. That little bulb is going to make such a difference. So I'm going to start with 91% isopropyl alcohol. I'll even take a little blending solution, and I'll just move this around. So I'll just drip some of that on there. The reason I start with isopropyl is that's just going to give these inks a totally different fluid motion. You can see how the ink gets suspended in that particular solvent. We're still going to use blending solution, because blending solution is still going to blend our inks. And the alloys, though, you just got to be careful with them, because they are intense. I'm just going to start by just moving this color around. And you can see by just pushing that, I'm still getting all those undertones, because you would think that the fact that I dripped it all down, it would have all been one color, right? But that isopropyl keeps that ink separated, believe it or not. It's almost like oil and vinegar, right? But it doesn't really, but it keeps it suspended, so when I push this around, I'm able to get those undertones of blue. I'm able to keep that pink there, or I can move that color over, right? So if I want to pull that color over, I can create that really unique effect. Now, I take a little alloy, one little drop of that. That's going to be intense. I can use a little blending solution. Blending solution is going to blend this versus lighten all my color. And it wants to break up the party. So blending solution is going to take that alloy and just really spread it around. Okay? Keeps it very chunky as well. Can you see how it breaks apart? Mm-hmm. Now the thing about an alloy, though, it's different than a mixative. The alloys want to get back to the party, right? So as soon as you push that out, it wants to go back together. So once you get it broken apart, you can either stay with the air blower and you can keep it there until it dries. You can take a heat tool to set it, right, to keep it from moving. Or if you don't like all of that mix, you can go back in with more ink, more blending solution. But you can see that this isopropyl completely different. But see how it like took away the color? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the blending solution blends, the isopropyl almost creates these windows. And I do think that, you know, using it more and more, I love how fluid the isopropyl makes this, right? Blending solution dries so quick, so yeah, it gives me movement, but not like regular alcohol. So I think it's important to have both. And you definitely need 91% or higher in order for it to move the ink. If you just take regular standard rubbing alcohol, it's not strong enough to get these inks or alloys to move. So you can usually find it like in the pharmacy section. I don't believe it's flammable, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. All right.
And the blending solution
Is it?
seals okay.
I'm not sure.
Like vodka.
Oh yeah. Well, see, no, I should probably craft with vodka. So just looking at that background, I mean, you can see that I did nothing but really just blow color around, and that to me is what I like about this, is that people that are working with color and they don't know how to paint and how to layer and all that, literally just taking that and moving it around just changes everything, including the lighting. Look at that, it was perfect timing. It's like, wow. It's like, look how luminous that is. And like, it would be that. Yeah, it would be that, and now we can see. So, pretty exciting. Always fun to have some new stuff with Ranger for Creativation. So, thanks for joining our VIP demo.
Thank you.
Really nice. That's cool, right?
Do you use this with like your paints or anything?
Yeah, I've used it over stuff because it's such a beautiful, it's a leafing metallic. That's the thing to understand. Because I had to say to the chemist, I'm like, what makes it different than a mixer? I mean, I understand he's got different resins and all that. I'm like, but is that all that makes it different? He's like, no, it's a completely different metallic. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, well, it's a higher quality, it's a leafing metallic that wants to stay together. You know, like when you have leafing, how it just, even if you pull it apart, it just kind of almost magnetized together, it just sticks together. So he's like, I take that metallic, and I love to use it just to rub onto surfaces. However, because it doesn't contain enough resin, if you wanted to use it over paint or something like that, you would want to take this with just a drop of this, because this resin is what's going to help bond that metallic to the surface.
Could you do that, say on your sheet, you put your alloy, you put the resin, sort of mix it like a paint.
Yep, like a paint.
And then...
Yep, and then, yeah, so I've done that and just use my finger and like rub it on something and it stays, because without that...
Coffee will be available for purchase in Bistro 4 in the back of the hall.
Well, at least she waited till the end. I mean, let's give her credit for that.
Just 15 minutes away.
Yeah, she's like,
The consistency of collagen from the, how does it come?
this one? Sure. So I can do tiny dots. Yeah. But this won't dry dimensional.
I was gonna ask,
Collage Medium is not
difference
designed to be dimensional. Collage Medium will just do this. It's designed to shrink. So when we use it as a glue, like you can put it onto a bottle and stick it on, it bonds right away, but as it dries, it's going to shrink behind that bottle and be completely invisible. So you don't have to worry about like cleaning the glue off of things. It doesn't have any shine at all. Completely transparent, completely matte, and it shrinks. And that's the best. And the thing about Collage Medium, really, when you're gluing with it, when I say it has a drying time of now, if you put paper down with Collage Medium, it's down. It won't move, it won't budge. Same thing with like metal or glass. The idea is that if you were going to glue a glass bottle, you would put Collage Medium, stick the bottle down. You may have like a second or two to adjust it and leave it. If you keep fussing with it, because the Collage Medium is still wet, you're breaking that bond right from go. So by the time it shrinks and dries, you've already broken that bond and it's just going to fall off. But if you just put it in there and leave it, give it that adjustment, like it won't come out. You'll have to pry it out with a screwdriver.
clear droplets can be stuck? Clear droplets?
It won't give you any shine. Yeah, so if you wanted clear droplets, you would want to do like glossy accents. Something that's designed to be clear and dimensional. Yeah, this is designed to just flatten out. It's cool. Yes? This is resin. So Ranger has a clear resin kit for alcohol ink. They didn't give me one, but it's a little box of 2-part resin that is designed to not react with alcohol ink. There's a lot of resins out there. Some react with alcohol inks, some do not. So this is just a little kit. I'll grab it if you don't mind. They mind, but I won't.
So let me grab the glove. No.
If you don't,
So these are the 2 SKUs. So this just has 2 little bottles. It's just A and B, right? Part A, part B, then there's mixing cups and these little spatulas, and you just mix equal parts, stir it up, wait 5 minutes, pour it on, it self-levels. You can use a heat tool or a torch to dry the bubbles, and then you have this awesome enameled finish. And I tried it. They're going to hate this too. When I did my project for the designer, I just used the air blowers, but this was really just one of those sample things. I wasn't making anything, so I'm really glad people like it. But this is one of those things that are like, okay, I need to do my project for Creativation. Let me take a panel, I'm going to blow the inks, I'm going to blow the alloys, I'm going to do some lift ink, I'm going to do some stenciling, I'm going to stamp with archival different levels, I'm going to do some rub-ons, and then I'm just going to put resin on it and see like what it reacts with. And then when I came back the next morning and I saw it, I'm like, I'm done. I'm an artist. Look at that. Like, totally like that. It was not my intention to even make anything.
That's cool.
Because I wanted to see, like, would it eat the
It's cool.
rub-ons? Would it make the lip ink go away? When I stamped in different levels of archival, would it fade? So that's why I did, like, first generation, second, third. You can see that now. Just to see, like, would it fade something? Yeah, and then when it was done, I'm like, oh, look at me. Yeah, it's fantastic. And this was only 1 cup. 1 cup of that did the whole thing. I was shocked. Yes?
Did you notice that any of it changed?
No. It actually intensified the color. Yeah. All right, our next group is here. Thanks, you guys.